Hey, what's up, guys? Got another new video here for you. This is Tuned In Sports. My name's Bryson.
I'm Steve.
And today we got a fun, exciting video for you talking about the NCAA football playoff. The standings were announced last weekend. Some people agree with them, some don't. But, they're the standings nonetheless. So At this point, doesn't really matter. I guess, for the most part, with the exception of a couple teams, if you don't want to potentially get counted out, don't lose. That's exactly. The easiest way. Like my team, for instance, if you want to make sure that you're in it, don't lose. And so... Regardless, though, we got Heisman candidates announced and everything else, so it'll be exciting to see how everything shakes out. But like I said, we got our top four. Number 1 will be Alabama against number 4 Notre Dame, and number 2 Clemson will be against number 3 Ohio State. I think both of the matchups are intriguing in their own way. Starting with, let's just go ahead and start with the Clemson one. 2 versus 3. Obviously, usually number 2 versus 3 is always an interesting matchup because when it comes to 1 versus 4, sometimes the differential in the talent can be a lot greater from 1 to 4, whereas 2 to 3 is usually pretty close. That doesn't always result in the score being close, but,
Well, given this COVID season as well, I don't even know if we really have the 4 best teams playing.
Yeah.
Truthfully.
No.
There's no fault of Ohio State's that they only have 6 total games in because they had, I think, 3 or 4 games canceled due to COVID problems. So, they could have a lot more games under their belt. But with that being said, they haven't looked that spectacular to me. But, Ohio State travels well. They're a money-making establishment, which the NCAA likes. So I'm sure they were going to get them in there one way or the other. And I'm not saying that just because I don't like Ohio State. I'm just saying that, it makes sense from the NCAA standpoint because they make it interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. I feel like it was kind of a given that if Ohio State went winless that they were going to get thrown in there. Again, like you said, whether that was the right decision or not, I don't know. I think that at the very least they should have been the 4, kind of. But I don't know. At the greatest, they should have been the 4. At the least, they maybe should have not made it.
I think they were just trying to not have Clemson and
Notre Dame play a third time.
Play another game right after they just got done playing again.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
I was going to say, and I don't blame them for that either because I'm in the same boat. I kind of would rather not see that matchup again. But, then again, us playing against Ohio State is a matchup we've seen before. Us playing against Clemson is a matchup we've seen multiple times. Us playing against Notre Dame is a matchup that we don't see very often. So, interesting nonetheless. But, like I said, with this Clemson game, and as he alluded to, Ohio State, they haven't exactly wowed me. There's a lot of great things being said about Justin Fields, the quarterback there, and he was a Heisman candidate and stuff. But, in the game that he had against Northwestern, yikes. if that Justin Fields shows up for the Clemson game, this is going to be an absolute blowout of the worst way. And unfortunately, Northwestern, all the props to them, but unfortunately Northwestern is not Clemson. So if they struggled against Northwestern, I don't see that going any differently here. And don't get me wrong. I think he'll probably play better than he did in his last outing. But all I am saying is this is a hell of an opponent to bounce back against because they're solid on both sides of the ball. they have 5-star athletes all over the field, and good luck. And plus, they got Trevor Lawrence on the quarterback, so you got to keep up with that. ETN is a great running back. I mean, it's going to be a lot to keep up with. And do they have the weapons to do it? I think they probably do, but I don't know if that means that they will. The one thing I will say is the guy that ran for 300 yards or whatever in the Big Ten championship game, number 8 for Ohio State, I don't see him repeating that performance against Clemson. No. So they're going to need a lot more play from the quarterback. I don't see him doing that again. Like I said, they're not Northwestern. So they're going to need production from the running game and the quarterback. Otherwise, they're going to lose and probably lose big.
No, I would tend to agree. I mean, you could feasibly make a case that Clemson might be the number 1 ranked team coming into this, truthfully. I realize Alabama's undefeated and whatever, but given recent history, Alabama has not had a lot of success against Clemson. So I wouldn't be at all surprised if Clemson ends up winning this whole thing again. Not saying that Alabama can't play with them, because obviously Alabama can play with anybody. They've got enough athletes and everything to compete for sure.
They got enough athletes to give them the best game out of these other teams. For sure.
No, it's just that when, especially if what's his name, the quarterback for Clemson's healthy. I mean, they're almost unstoppable. So it's going to be a shootout, whoever they play. Mm-hmm. And I don't think Ohio State's got near enough guns to keep up with them. That's not saying that they won't. I mean, if Urban Meyer was there, I'd say possible. Urban Meyer was a hell of a coach. And
I was going to say, I'd give them more than a chance if Urban Meyer was coaching to pull off the upset. But without him, though, I just don't see it happening.
I mean, Ohio State's recruited as well as these other teams have, so that's why they're there. Mm-hmm. I mean, truthfully, there's really nobody in the Big Ten that's on their level. Northwestern played a hell of a game, and really, it was a shocking event that they were even in the championship game against them. Mm-hmm. So, hats off, like Bryson said, to that school, because the fact that they were playing for the championship is
a win.
Is a big feat. There's a big prize in itself. So,
and the fact that that's not the first time. They played in it a couple years ago too, I think. Mm-hmm. So, whoever's the coach down there,
Northwestern.
Yeah, they've done a hell of a job at keeping that program relevant over the last handful of years. Yeah. Because every year they're a school that's not an easy out, and that wasn't always the case. Put it that way.
I figure that they're usually, thought of as the GPA,
GPA school.
Yeah,
where they're keeping the average GPA of the conference up where it needs to be.
Right.
Because you need a 4.0 to get in there.
But that's also why they probably have success, is because maybe they're not beating you athletically, but they're beating you smarts-wise.
Yeah, exactly.
So. But
regardless, hell of a job, because that wasn't always the case where they were not an easy out.
No,
there's quite a few years where they were an easy out. It's like, okay, we get a break. We got Northwestern. So, but regardless, like I said, if Ohio State had some struggles with them, maybe mark it up to they didn't really take them that seriously. Potentially, maybe they were thinking it was just a walkthrough on the way to the next game.
I think they were missing players too, though.
Yeah, I'm just saying, whatever you want to mark it up to, they didn't look hot, and they need to look on fire if they are going to have a chance in this game. Unfortunately for them, I do think Clemson's going to win this, and I think it'll probably end up being not close. Even if Fields does play better, I think Clemson is just too tough.
I think Clemson wins by at least 10.
I think they win by at least 20.
Yeah.
I really think that. And I really think, too, that the difference in coaching between Urban Meyer and the guy that took over, who was it, Ryan Day, I think that's going to start becoming evident, too. I'm not saying the guy can't coach, but I'm just saying you're taking over for one of the best coaches.
Well, and it's much different when you're beating, the Purdue's and the
Idaho, yeah.
I mean, the teams where you should be walking over them because you have so much talent. There's not a whole lot of coaching involved with that.
Yeah.
But when you get into teams where they have like athletes, such as a Clemson or an Alabama or something, well, then it's going to come down to, can you coach or not?
Yeah.
So,
and that's why, I mean, a lot of times some of these teams that are repeat offenders and stuff constantly are winning and doing things instead of just being first round exits that can make it. Yeah. Is because a lot of people can go undefeated when they have more athletes than any team on both sides of the ball. But once they get to things where the athletes aren't so different, then it's coaching and schemes, and some people really get exposed at that point. Yeah. So, but regardless, yeah, I see Clemson winning pretty handily. Speaking of teams winning pretty handily, sorry Notre Dame fans. Last time we played you, it was 22-3. We ended up winning in the championship game, and truthfully, I don't know. I think this could go one of two ways. I think they could give us a shootout, because I don't think Alabama's defense is as good as it's been in years past. Not that it matters. I mean, when we've gotten to the playoffs, it's been pretty much a shootout regardless of how good the defense is each year. It's been, up and down the field. So, I mean, I don't expect that to be any different. However, what I will say is this is not the year where we're going to held, it's going to be 22-3 and just, or a 9-6 like we had against LSU or something like that. This isn't one of those years. So I could see Notre Dame, putting some points on the board. However, I don't think Notre Dame, as well as many other teams defensively, are going to have a lot of success. We have too many fast people, too many playmakers, too many different ways that we can score points, and Notre Dame is just going to be a fish out of water, I think. Unfortunately, I mean, I said this earlier, and I stand by it. I think this is the best Alabama offense I've ever seen. I truly believe it. I think this is better than the offense that we had with Tua, and that's saying something. I mean, that is saying something, especially with the route runners and stuff that we had. People in the NFL right now, I mean, shoot. But I think this is the best offense we've had, and I think that's going to show through here. Because Notre Dame, they're not bad defensively, but they aren't seeing these athletes week to week. No. I think that shellacking from Clemson will actually help them because they're not going to be just like, holy crap, look at the speed of these guys or anything. They just played another top team. So I think that they'll come into this game knowing what to expect a little bit more. So I think that will help them. But I don't give them much of a chance. And I'm not just saying that because I'm an Alabama fan. I mean, obviously I'm going to go with my team anyways. But I truthfully would pick Notre Dame to win if I thought that they would. I mean, a handful of weeks ago, I picked Georgia to beat us. They didn't, but I picked them. I did think Georgia was going to beat us. So, I mean, here, I think that... I think we're going to beat Notre Dame pretty handily. It could look very similar to the Clemson-Ohio State game, to be honest with you. It could be a similar thing where it's really not a game. And, I mean, just being honest, if Clemson hadn't lost Trevor Lawrence for COVID, they probably would have beat Notre Dame the first time. I mean, it was a shootout overtime loss. So it's not like they handled them with the other thing. So if not for that, Clemson would probably be number 1 or number 2. And, I mean, come on. It's just been a collision course for a while now that it was going to be us against Clemson again. It's been a collision course for a while. So I don't see that. I mean, for the Irish fans, I guess, I hope that they do perform well. And honestly, as a fan of football, I'd like to see it be a good game. Especially, when you got supposedly the best 4 teams and it's supposed to be this playoff matchup thing, and these are some all really good teams, you don't want to see 2 games be blowouts. No. Because it's like, well, then, are they really the best teams? Or, I mean, is there that big of a gap? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I don't want it to be a blowout, even if it's my game that's a tight one. I'd like to see, as a fan of football, a good game.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, as a fan of the team, you'd love to see your team just handle somebody so you don't have to worry about it. But as a fan of football, I'd like to see a good game. So I do hope that they play us tough. But I just, like I said, it's been a collision course with Clemson for a while now, I think. I think it's just been kind of written in stone since.
Yeah, I mean, I obviously no love lost
for the Irish, yeah.
I mean, they've ruined many a year for me. So if they get hammered on, it's not going to bother me any. However, it is, I got to say, probably good for football to have them back in the mix, because Notre Dame is definitely one of the more popular teams and has more fans than a lot of teams do.
Yeah.
They travel well.
Yeah, and it's probably, like you say, it's probably better for the sport for them to be performing well, not
it's good to have them relevant. It's better to have them relevant than not, as much as I hate to say that.
Yeah.
But with that being said, I don't see them coming away with a victory against Alabama. I think it's going to be a long day for them.
Yeah.
I think Clemson kind of exposed them a little bit, and if you're having problems, you can only expect to see a lot more coming.
Yeah.
And truthfully, I think Nick Saban he's not going to care about running it up a little bit.
No.
If he can do it, he will.
Well, and then also you think about, too, we're not talking about Doug Peterson and the Eagles here. Nick Saban watches tape. And he's going to look at the last game and say, hey, and same thing can be said for Dabo Swinney. He's going to look at the last game that Ohio State had against Northwestern and say, hey, why did they struggle? And do exactly that. And that's the same thing for Saban. We're talking about coaches here that know how to adjust and know how to attack and expose weaknesses. And it's not just because of their athletes or anything like that, especially when you get into this point where, you're talking about teams that are pretty high in the draft class every year. I mean, especially Ohio State, Clemson, Alabama, those are usually teams in the top 5 to 10 schools. So it's not like, we're talking about 1 versus 30 here. We're talking, so all I'm saying is don't think for a minute that Saban and Swinney aren't going to be watching the last games of the other teams where they both didn't look very good, even though one won and the other lost, and saying, hey, we're going to do what they did. Because they know how to do it. They know how to make adjustments, unlike our pro teams who go out there and seem to have no idea how to match the success of teams before them.
Yeah, no kidding.
So,
that's the truth.
So, I mean, as much as I think, like I said, with both teams, as much as I think that Notre Dame and Ohio State won't look as bad as they maybe did in their last performance, I don't know. I mean, they could look better and still get blown out. You know what I mean?
Well, this isn't the game that you're going to get well against.
Well, yeah, exactly. That's what I said. It's not an easy bounce back opponent.
No.
Like, oh, we're going to right the ship here against Alabama. Okay. Good luck.
No.
Good luck with that.
With that being said, though, there was many a year I didn't think Notre Dame was going to beat Michigan. And
yeah, there you go.
Notre Dame finds ways, and
they
got the Lord on their side, so watch out. You better watch out. Anything's possible.
Yeah, no, and like I said before, our defense is not as good as it's been in years past, so I could easily see it being a shootout. I mean, like the Florida matchup was. I mean, we were in control for the most part, but it was a shootout. They were still scoring.
Yep.
I mean, we were ahead by double digits, but they were scoring every time we were scoring. And then at the end, it ended up being close. And I could see that being the case with this. However, even in a shootout, like I said, we have the best offense, in my opinion, we've ever had. So I'm still picking us. I'm still picking us. But, and to further illustrate what I said earlier, you know, we both agree on that. So let's talk about the final thing. Now, I think when it comes to our matchup against Clemson, I'm going to say what I said earlier. Just because I'm a fan of the team doesn't mean that I just would pick him regardless. And this is a classic example. Because when we get to the final matchup against Clemson, as much as I believe in our offense, I think our defense being so bad, or not, well, I wouldn't say bad, but just not as good, is going to play a big part in us probably losing that game. Because what I will say is that I think Clemson's defense is probably better than our defense. So therefore, we're going to have to score pretty much every time to keep up. Whereas our offense might get stopped a couple of times. And their offense, I wouldn't be surprised if they just go up and down the field. Again, we have a great coach, so let's not act like, you know, he's not going to be prepared. But all I'm saying is, I mean, it could be a long afternoon. Like I said, though, we do have the best offense that I believe we've ever had. So, or at least in the Nick Saban era, I'm talking. But, so with that being said, in my opinion, great offense cancels great defense. Because generally, when we get to these points, no matter what, it ends up being a shootout. Every game with Clemson that we've had, win or lose, you know, because we beat Watson the one time, and we beat them a couple of times, or at least once or twice, and they've beat us, I think, twice. Each time it's been up and down the field both ways. Mm-hmm. And then the one time last year in the final, Clemson obviously mopped the floor with us. But, I mean, that could easily be the case here. However, I don't believe that will be the case. No. I truly, or not last year, but the year previous. But I do not believe that will be the case. I believe that this will be a shootout again. However, you know, I believe Clemson has a little bit better defense. And I don't know if their offense is as good as ours, but I don't think it matters because I think their defense is a little better and could potentially create stops more than our defense could. So I think Clemson would beat us if that ends up being the matchup, which I have full faith that it will be. So I'm just kind of like, oh boy, here we go, another year against Clemson. And they're, you know, in terms of coaches, probably with Urban Meyer not doing it anymore, two best coaches in college football. And it shows because look at their playoff records.
Yeah.
They rarely ever lose. Neither one of them. If they're in it, good luck. So, yeah. I mean, I fully expect that to be the matchup, and I think I would pick Clemson, but I'm not counting us out. I'm not saying we have no shot. We have more than a chance. I think we have even a good chance to beat them. But I would pick Clemson in that. So that just illustrates my point earlier. Just because I'm a fan doesn't mean that I'm, you know, just saying that we're unstoppable, because we're not. But, I mean, I would pick Clemson in that matchup, but it would be a good game, though. Like I said, I don't think it would be the 40-16 outing that we had the year when Tua was in there and, you know, then he got hurt in the game and stuff. I don't think that would be...
No, probably not. I think it'll be a close game when they play.
Yeah.
I think it'll be a good game. It'll be what the NCAA wanted it to be.
Yeah, which is why I feel like it's been kind of a collision course since.
Yeah. I think that's going to happen. I mean, we both have those two teams getting to the final. Mm-hmm. And then, like I said, I find it hard to just because of the recent success that Clemson's had and how dominant they can be when what's his name is healthy, the quarterback
Lawrence.
When Lawrence is playing, I give Clemson the edge partially because he's a better quarterback in my opinion. He's the best quarterback in college football, and usually the best quarterback will win. Just because it's not just about being able to run the football at that point. It's about, how many different ways can I toss balls over your head and get guys catching it. And I mean, it's hard to scheme when you got a guy like Aaron Rodgers on the other side.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many different ways he attacks you. And, I mean, Trevor Lawrence allows them to do a lot of things that maybe most teams wouldn't be able to accomplish.
Yep.
So, but they're gonna be, I mean, if it ends up being those two teams, which I'm predicting it will, that's gonna be one hell of a final.
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, I think that's gonna be
probably potentially could be one of the best games that the finals have ever had.
Yeah, and that's why I think that they want it to,
Yeah. Hats off to Cincinnati, undefeated season. Ended
up
wasn't
to 6.
any fault of their own that they're not in this.
No.
That's why they really need to expand this playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
Because to me, that team really is I mean, getting screwed. Texas A&M. Now they lost to Alabama.
Mm-hmm.
But they righted the ship and made it through, one of the tougher divisions in college football,
Without a loss.
Yeah, I mean, and so, Texas A&M, hats off to them. Jimbo Fisher, great job this year. Like I said, Cincinnati, wonderful job.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, this is where, because of the scheduling, not being able to play opponents outside of your own division, you kind of lose because of it.
Yeah.
If you're in a smaller conference.
Yeah.
You just don't get the love. So,
yeah.
Now,
and Coastal Carolina as well went undefeated.
Yeah.
But again, another situation where it's like, well, sorry, you're not a Power 5.
Yeah, and they played BYU outside of conference, which hats off to BYU for playing them.
Yeah.
Because that wasn't supposed to be a game.
No. And hats off to them for beating BYU because BYU's, speaking of teams turning the ship around,
yeah,
they're getting to the point where they're
so
serious.
there's a lot of crazy stuff happening this year with all this stuff. The fact that they made it to this point is a victory in itself.
Mm-hmm.
Because when all this was going on, nobody even thought they would finish the season.
Yeah.
Everybody was calling like, oh, it's going to, as soon as the wintertime hits, it's going to be game over and all this kind of stuff. And with that being said, even the NFL and the NBA, all these leagues that are conquering this.
Yeah, they're fortunate to be playing.
Yeah, they've done a wonderful job, to be able to keep product on the tube for you. So,
yeah.
Anyway, that's hats off to all those people. Last thing I'd like to mention is in regards to the bowl games, I really do hope that they find out a way to expand the amount of teams that are in the playoff discussion. I'd like to see it get to 8 teams, maybe 6 to 8.
Yeah.
To where it would be a little more representation of teams that are usually out of the conversation because they don't play at the Big Ten or the SEC or something. So hopefully they'll come to a conclusion with that, and
Yeah, because I fully agree because I feel like getting to 8 would be good because getting to some people say, well, once you get to 8, then you're just talking about teams. You're gonna have the same problem about who got screwed and finished 9th, 10th, and whatever. But at the same time, when you get to that point, you're getting to teams that have 1-2 losses on them. So, for the most part, they're probably not going to win anything anyways. Right. So what does it matter? But however, when we're talking about just 4, like we said, Cincinnati, some of these teams, that, want to say that, hey, we deserve to at least have a shot, well, they would get that shot in that scenario. Whereas right now, as it sits, they're getting screwed. And the other thing is, too, we mentioned Texas A&M. They lost to Alabama, but for one, it was early in the season. I mean, it was like second or third week of the season that they lost. Haven't lost since. They got a good coach, Jimbo Fisher. Let's not act like if they were to face again, he wouldn't be prepared and wouldn't have a better game plan or something. And the other thing is, too, is a lot of it is matchups.
Yeah.
I mean, when you're talking about Texas A&M, they might have a hard time against Alabama or Clemson, but who wouldn't? Right. But by the same token, I think that when you're talking about those two teams specifically, Texas A&M, they could give a lot of teams troubles because they do a lot of things well. And if they were to get the right matchup, it might be a struggle for somebody. I mean, again, when we're talking about Trevor Lawrence and even Mac Jones, I mean, I would agree that probably Trevor Lawrence is the better overall quarterback. But they're both Heisman candidates, and they have similar stats. As a matter of fact, Mac Jones has similar stats to Joe Burrow last year, and he only played games in conference. He didn't have a couple of cupcakes to raise the stats a little bit either, So, I mean, something's got to be said for that. But, I mean, I'm just saying, when you play against quarterbacks and stuff like that, a great quarterback makes the team just really good and difficult to defend. So I'm not saying they would potentially beat a Clemson or something, but it would be an intriguing matchup. And, I mean, I just think it really needs to happen because, it kind of is annoying to hear year in, year out, oh, my team got screwed out of the Final Four, in replace of Notre Dame or Ohio State or something, who maybe wouldn't deserve to be in it, but they get in it just because of name recognition a lot of times. So, I mean, it is what it is, but it is unfortunate as well. So, I mean, I think moving it to 8, like I said, I mean, the teams that are 9, 10, 11, well, generally those are going to probably be teams where they have a couple of losses on their record. So, I mean, like we said at the start of the show, if you don't want to worry about it, win. Don't lose. But still, I mean, I don't think it would be that big of a difference to make it 8, especially when you consider that for the most part, I mean, these teams...
they're all playing bowl games anyways.
Yeah, exactly. So what's one or two more? And especially this season, when everyone's season was shortened and stuff, this would have been the perfect year to say, hey, for 1 year only, we're going to try out 8-team playoff or more. If I don't know if that would have been the right thing to do or not. Say 16 or 12 or whatever. But pick a number a lot higher than 4 and say for 1 year only, we're going to try this. And just see how the ratings do.
Yeah.
And I would bet that instead of people watching some no-name bowls that no one probably even realizes are on, that with the advertisements and everything, people would be tuning into those.
Yep.
Like, right away. I mean, instead of watching Cincinnati play whoever the hell they're going to wind up playing in their bowl game, and somebody might tune into it because they happen to click on the channel and notice that it was on, if you called that another playoff matchup and they're playing against somebody, I bet you people would be watching it.
Yeah.
So I really don't see what there is to lose from doing it.
There isn't,
because financially,
it's a win-win for the NCAA and the schools.
Yeah, exactly.
It is. All it is a money-making proposition.
Yeah. And, people talking about, oh, well, it shortens the amount of time that they have for the off season to go into the NFL or whatever. But, I mean, at the same time, it gives them extra games to further their stock.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and the other part of it is, too, is they're professional athletes. That's going to be their job. Sorry,
Well, not to mention, in my opinion, I mean, if the bowl that you're in isn't necessarily going to be your last bowl, then you're not going to see all these high-profile athletes saying, "Oh, I'm not playing. I'm not playing."
Yeah, exactly.
Because you still have something to play for, when there's a national championship at stake. Where a lot of these games, I mean, I know last year especially, I mean, half the good players don't even play. They don't suit up.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what happened at the year that you guys played. Yeah, last year when you guys played against us. I mean, anybody that was worth a damn sat out, and we ended up steaming you.
Yeah.
And maybe if those guys had played, I mean, I don't know if it would have. I'm not saying that they maybe would have won, because obviously Alabama is Alabama, but it would have probably been a lot better game than it ended up being. And that's the other thing. When you got people, like for instance, Florida, what's his name? Kyle Pitts, the star tight end, he said, I'm done declaring for the NFL. So he's not playing. And I think Kyle Trask is still playing, but he might not be. But anyway, regardless, I mean, if they were in an 8-team playoff or something and they still had a reason to play, they would be playing. So you wouldn't see that, which only helps also because that again,
You're putting out better product for people to watch that way.
And who wants to watch a bowl game when all you ever hear about is, "Oh, this game doesn't mean anything. Oh, okay, I'm not playing. I'm not going to risk getting injured." So give it some meaning. Yeah. I think you can still do the bowl game stuff without everyone having to be involved in a playoff scenario, but at the same time, I mean,
that's why I said, I mean, it's a win-win situation because you're going to get a better brand of football for one.
Yeah.
And you're going to have more teams involved in playing all their players because they got opportunities to go forward.
Yeah, and not only that, but I mean, you can do what you're already doing, where the games are still different and they're still bowl games. It's just the bowl game is also a playoff game. The Rose Bowl is now a playoff game. So you can do the same thing. The Tostitos Fiesta Bowl is a bowl game. All-State Sugar Bowl, bowl game. Cotton Bowl, bowl game. So you're still getting that sponsorship and everything. It just means more, which is only going to be better for the people that sponsor the games, because that means more revenue for them. And not only that, but in terms of in-person people showing up, that's only going to include their revenue as well. Yep. I mean, obviously this year, there's probably not going to be too many, if any, people at these games. I know that they're playing them in Texas or whatever, so there will be some fans allowed in the game. But I'm just saying, when things get back to normal and you can have a full slate of people, where some of these games where, everyone's like, "Oh, why do I want to pay a bunch of money to go see this when no one's going to be playing?" They will show up because it's like, "Oh, shoot, this is a playoff game this year." So, I mean, it can only benefit everyone involved. I just hope they finally get around to doing it.
Yep.
Because, enough is enough with this. And, there's other things that can be said about, well, like, if you guys know that your in-conference schedule is weak, obviously this year was standing, schedule top teams outside of it, and then beat them and get some credibility. You know what I mean? Don't just, say, "Oh, well, for our toughest out-of-conference team, we played against Purdue, and we managed to beat them, so you should include us in the mix." You got to put some higher caliber teams up there, and then maybe you might be able to do something. Beat some of those teams on a regular basis. Have a couple of teams like that, like a Texas or something on your schedule year to year. I mean, obviously they're going to need to schedule those teams, and those teams have to want to play them too. But I'm just saying, get some of those Power 5 conference upper tier teams on your schedule regularly. Then you'll start seeing no complaints from people about, "Oh, well, wait till they play a real team." You won't hear that. Because it's like, "Oh, well, they did." They've been doing it. So, I mean, like I said, there's an argument to be made for, hey, there's more those schools could be doing if they want more respect. But with that being said, I mean, put an 8-team playoff in, and we'll find out regardless. So let's make that happen. Let that be one good thing coming out of 2020. They realized that we need an 8-team playoff at least. So.
Agreed.
Either way. All right, well, with that being said, guys, this has been the college football playoff preview. Thank you guys for watching. We're excited to watch all the games regardless of what happens. We'll see. Roll Tide and, take out those Irish. And, yeah. So, with that being said, guys, Bryson.
I'm Steve.
See you guys in the next video.